tripods. There we go.
So, thank you very much for giving me the this opportunity, Guy. For everyone who will be watching this video later, my name is Joseph, and I'm interviewing here extraordinary cellist Guy Johnston. Guy, would you briefly introduce yourself? Just give a little bit of background, maybe, just for viewers.
Yeah, so you said I'm Guy Johnston, and I am a cellist trying to survive through this difficult time like everyone else, and very happy, Joseph, to be doing this interview. Did we meet up at the Royal Northern?
Yeah, we met with a slight gap between us. You were at the bottom of the lecture theatre, and I was near the top, and I kind of shouted some question about Kavalevsky at you.
Yes.
But yeah, you could say we met.
That's right. Yeah, that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, you were giving masterclass. I think you gave my friend a masterclass, my friend Elliot a masterclass on Elgar.
Yes.
Yeah, that was very...
When we could all be in the same room, and so I'm just going to grab my coffee. Right. And so, Joseph, you've started this, is it a series of interviews? And
I really hope so. It started with it was a project that was part of a module that I chose to do. It was a module called Freelance Musician, and I had a very brief interview with Steven Isserlis, which was fun. It was just over email, but I thought that it'd be wonderful if I could interview in any way over email or voice call or video as many brilliant musicians that I'm particularly sort of fond of as I can. It would be something incredible to have like on record, and it teach me a lot about certain things. It's just a great thing to do, I think, and I'm really, really grateful. I'm very grateful indeed. So if everything is still good, those 6 questions I emailed you, I will be asking. The ones I sent you on email, is that all right?
Yeah, I remember reading them a while ago, but we can have a nice chat and see where we go.
So I thought the first question should be to do with this extraordinary situation that we've found ourselves in, and this current pandemic it's forced most musical projects to be cancelled or delayed, and musicians of every nature, not just classical, we've been left with this sort of unprecedented stretch of emptiness. And I was wondering, like, with being faced with this sort of unusual period, how you yourself have used this time to sort of develop in ways that you might not have been able to before, like, and after that, like, how you might feel about returning to like a packed concert hall, because I've seen your Facebook videos and you've performed, you've kept very busy, but I'm imagining that playing in a packed concert hall might just feel a bit different. So yeah, how have you been using this time, Guy?
Well, it's interesting because when I think back to when I started my journey as a sort of professional musician, it was maybe 20 years ago. After the BBC competition, and I don't remember a time where I've ever stopped during that time, and it's always been in the back of my mind. I wonder if I should, take a break at some point and smell the roses. It's been a very intense time with many exciting and thrilling opportunities, traveling the world, playing concerts, meeting musicians, and so on. So when suddenly this lockdown happened, I have to admit, initially, along with all the worry of the situation, I was kind of a bit relieved. I felt like a big weight off my shoulders, like, oh my goodness, I can wake up in the day and plan it exactly how I want, or I could just go with the flow and see what happens. So you asked how I used the time. Initially, I was just enjoying that free time, and I finished teaching at Eastman School of Music. The semester ended at the beginning of May, and I basically started dipping into pieces I had wanted to play for quite some time. I started looking into cello technique and lots of manuals and books that I had never read before, that I heard about. Got really quite geeky, but what was fun was to be able to do it away from expectation, pressure, opportunities that somehow, you know, can get in the way of this kind of deep study and thought and reflection and things. So yeah, that initially, that's how I was spending my time.
That's really interesting to hear, because that kind of dips into a question that I had later about technique, but I'll say the question proper later on. But yeah, how are you anticipating the way you might feel returning to a packed Wigmore Hall, not just a few audience members, but a full house?
Yeah.
Is it something that excites you or makes you nervous, or both?
It's funny. I mean, you mentioned the Wigmore Hall. After this initial free time, I suddenly got a phone call from the Wigmore Hall saying, would I like to come and perform in one of their lockdown concerts, which was in June. And that was to an empty hall. It was just the director of Wigmore Hall, John Gilhooly, and the radio producer, and me and Melvin Tan. And it was bizarre. We knew it was being streamed live to many people, but it was an empty concert hall. It was a really, really wonderful experience to be able to have that adrenaline again, and that feeling of expressing yourselves, and in such a wonderful acoustic and such a special place that I've played in every year for the last 20 years, and I have concerts planned in the future. And next year I have a concert there, and I'm hoping that, you know, things will return to normal. But it was kind of powerful, the fact that there weren't people there. We knew we had listeners and people viewing. But yeah, I mean, I think even now social interaction is strange, because no one quite knows how to be when we're together. And it's going to take a while to build up the confidence that it's okay. We can embrace, we can meet, we can be close, and so on. But nobody knows exactly when that will happen. And it seems like another time gone by, live performance and big audiences and so on, the proms, etc.
I don't know whether I'm going to get a feeling of surrealness, or whether it's just going to be like back to normal when it happens. But I'm looking forward to just music being able to flow freely again, as it were. I mean, I think it's incredible that you felt that adrenaline rushing, even though there was nobody in the hall. I guess that just speaks volumes about the power of the music itself.
Yeah, and the space that you're playing in, and the history of the place. I mean, I was backstage and looking at all the pictures on the wall of all these great artists, and two of my old teachers, Steven Isserlis and Ralph Kirschbaum, were there on the wall. And I remember thinking quite philosophically about, you know, what I'd learned from them, and thinking of how inspired I'd be by them, and the sort of memories, and thinking, you know, what an honor it was to be in there warming up for a concert in the Wigmore Hall. I still feel like that. And because I hadn't had that adrenaline rush for quite some time, I remember lying down about an hour before the concert and my heart was pounding. I mean, I just remember thinking, this incredible surge. And we kind of get used to that feeling when we're on the road doing it more often than not. And it was a really heightened, sensitized experience again. It was like, yes, I'm so excited. I'm kind of nervous, but I'm excited. And I'd prepared, because I had no other concerts, I prepared in a way that felt like I was able to get deep into the scores. And I felt like I prepared myself well enough at that point to just let go and go and play, and let that energy guide me a bit. And so yeah, it was great.
It was brilliant. I listened to your Rachmaninoff in that concert, and it was wonderful. And if I may say, like, I mean, it goes without saying, but I had also watched your masterclass with Steven 20 years
Yes.
ago, and like you played well then, but you've it's 20 years later, but it's improved so much. Like,
Actually, that was in Bob Boas's house, the Rachmaninoff, and the link's still there if people want to hear it.
oh yeah, I think some of it's on YouTube. But
Yeah.
to go back a bit in your life, the next question is to do with yeah. Let me see.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned. Sorry, just while you're thinking, the masterclass with Steven, and he was on at me about vibrato, and
Yes,
that it shouldn't sound like a crazed sheep or something, and that it shouldn't be automatic, and it should always be reacting to the bow and the shape and in what we're doing, and that somehow, for years I've been. That's you're standing on the shoulders of giants. You're constantly thinking about these things, and so I even myself, when I listened back to the Rachmaninoff performance recently, and then I actually saw the masterclasses before we did that performance, and I sent them to Tom Posture, and I said, look, can you believe? I felt so horrible in that class. It was just a horrible feeling, because I was nervous and in front of all my peers, and I put these expectations on myself and so on. And but just to be able to be more mindful of these things, that somehow, the sugar on vibrato shouldn't be overused, and that it's always there to support the phrase and enhance what you're doing, not overly romanticized and getting in the way of. Yeah.
something you always have to remind yourself of, I suppose. Like, try not to slip back into that sort of little vice.
Yeah, and I tell my students, play without any vibrato at all, just with the bow, shaping with the bow, and then think about where the height of a phrase is, and where the intensity is building to and coming away. And vibrato is an expressive tool, and it comes from the heart, and that it should be expressing a natural feeling, not something overdone or superficial. Mm.
I'd like to just I'd like to skip the next question. I'll go back to it, but it's just because this question afterwards is so very relevant to what we were just talking about. It's to do with Stephen, and he has been a long time and extremely strong influence on the way you've developed your musical identity. And my question for you is, what particular moments from your time with Stephen would you say revolutionized you as a musician that you keep looking back on as you search for this musical brilliance? What are those moments that changed you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm at that point where you have all these influences, and Stephen was a real idol of mine when I was or do I say I was an idol of his? No, yeah, he was my idol. I don't think I'm his idol. I yeah, I have had to kind of distance myself in a way, because you start to try and copy things and what you hear, and I think that's the danger now, that students listen a lot to recordings and take ideas. Often I say, why are you doing that? Well, so and so does it.
I'm guilty.
And we're all guilty of it, but I think so we try and go back to the heart of the score, and in fact that's what Stephen was all about. I mean, I first met Stephen when I was 15, I think, in Tanglewood in America, and he was playing Beethoven Triple Concerto, and he'd met my eldest brother just before that, and my eldest brother said, I was in Tanglewood, and he's a huge idol of yours, please, you should meet. And then I met him, and then when I was at Chetham's, I think a year later, he came up to play a Schumann Concerto, his concerto up in in the Bridgewater Hall, and I remember going up and going to hear that, and then we encouraged him to come and give a class at the at Chetham's, and played for him there. And then I went to Prussia Cove, IMS Prussia Cove, and played maybe 4 or 5 years. I went there for classes, master classes with him, and studied also with David Waterman, who is from the Endelian Quartet, and also my teacher Stephen Doan in America at Eastman, where I'm now working alongside. all three of them studied with the same teacher, Jane Cowan, who was, by all accounts, a very eccentric Scottish. I'm not sure if she was Scottish, but she moved up to home in Scottish. I think she was English, but she had family in Scotland, and certainly an estate that she moved to, and she basically adopted these cellists and told the parents, they're coming with me. We're taking them away from institutions, and we're going to study things together, not just cello, but all things, you know, academically and musically and spiritually and philosophically and so on. So they had a very unusual path in their early development, and I think that really comes through in their teaching, and certainly their style of teaching, the way they talk about circular bowing and angle bowing and phrasing and natural. The word natural keeps coming back, and don't get in the way of the music. We are servants to the music, and you know, because it's really interesting, these role models taking on, you know, years later you can absorb information that you've been given and make it your, and the important turning point is to make it your own, so that, you know, it's something that's been passed on and is going through you, and you're then part of that process, passing it on, and so yeah, hugely influenced by all of them. And actually the gut string thing, which I tried for a couple of years. I played a Schumann Concerto, which is also online, on gut strings, and I played some Bach recitals, and I loved it because it kind of had a more human element to the sound. It was, you know, you really had to bow in the right way and use your natural weight and the right angles to make the sound speak. And it was an amazing connection with the instrument, because it was a certain way you had to generate the sound that you can get away with murder with metal strings. But it really taught me a lot about bowing in particular, and then how to color the sound, because there's already color in the gut strings that somehow gives something already before you've even added a little bit of your own color. And so yeah, they've been tremendous influence.
Do you still use gut strings for certain? Do you have a cello with a gut setup that you might use for Bach still? Like,
that would be nice, wouldn't it, to have two? Because the problem is, the minute you change the setups, there's different tensions on the instrument, and the instrument then adjusts, and you have to change the sound post and the bridge and the tailpiece and everything. It's a bit like these race cars, isn't it? They're always modifying depending on the course and the weather and whatever. But with the gut strings, they were so temperamental. It was interesting in hot climates, you know, how much you had to, you know, the fun of trying to play in tune when you know your strings are completely out of tune. You have to be very flexible.
Yeah, the gut strings are absolutely beautiful. I don't know if I would. I know, perhaps one day I will attempt to make something with it.
Oh, you should, for yourself right now, while there's no concerts. Get the strings on the cello and just start.
Just on mine, like.
Yeah, absolutely. You can get these covered gut. They're Eudoxa, the A, D, and G Pirastro Eudoxa covered gut, and then on the bottom you can put an olive on there, and worry about the tweaking of the post later. But just put them on and start getting a feel, and you'll notice the strings are slightly fatter, rubbery, and the instrument will start saying, you'll find colors in the instrument that you've never found before, and you'll be thinking about your bow weight and pressure and sounding point a lot more, and have fun with it.
Yeah, I'd love to experiment with those strings. It sounds like a really important thing to try out at some point. To go back then to that second question, I'm sure you've been asked about this a huge amount, so please forgive me, but back in 2000, of course, you won the Young Musician competition, and this sort of event is what's the word I'm looking for? Well, it's huge. It was huge. It propelled you into the limelight of the classical world as this rising star of the cello. And I mean, we artists, we always face a certain amount of pressure from ourselves, from others, and certain pressures are constant. But after you won this incredibly important event, like, what new pressures did you find thrust upon you that were unprecedented? And like, how did you cope with them? How did it change you?
Yeah, it changes your life overnight because, funnily enough, I've just been playing with Sheku, who obviously has become a global superstar. But we've had a similar path to some extent to this point at this age. He's now 21. I think I was 18. We were similar ages when we won it. We played the same piece, and and in fact, he came and we worked on it before he did his final. But it brought all the memories back to me of what that experience was like and how much I took for granted what went into it. I mean, when you're that young and everything's ahead of you, you're kind of fearless, and you're just responding to everything. I had a lot of competition experience before that as well, and growing up, lots of festivals and things to work towards and performance opportunities. But nothing can prepare you for management and suddenly taking on opportunities further afield and the intense experience, the competition, the bigger ocean that you suddenly find yourself in of talent. And I think the hard thing is when you're propelled into the profession like that at such a young age, you're still learning a lot. You're learning all through your life, of course, but you're developing your voice and your approach to music, and you're finding out who you are. And there's certain things that felt a bit forced, to be honest, early on, but you were grateful for the opportunities, and you learned the hard way in a way. But it's interesting. I'm so grateful that it's changed my life, and it's given me tremendous opportunity. I think in life you have to work incredibly hard to do something well, and you then have to be very lucky. And when the two come together, and you have to put yourself in a position of luck, if that makes sense. It doesn't happen, money doesn't grow on trees, for example, or not that we're doing this for money. Oh my God, that's the wrong analogy completely. But unless you put something into what you're doing, you're not going to get much out. But yeah.
Like David Beckham apparently said, like, the more I practice, the luckier I get. I suppose that applies here.
Wow. Yeah.
So after this enormous victory, like, did you have this sort of urge to master as much repertoire at once, or were you focusing on perfecting certain pieces, like to go and play around? Like, what did you feel compelled to do?
It's funny because you get offered concerts, and there was certain repertoire that orchestras wanted. And I didn't want to keep playing the same piece over and over and over again. So I wanted to try and encourage as much, growth in other areas as possible. So whilst I got to know the repertoire, I think, it was just literally each season. I think I would add in a new concerto and a new recital program, and then I would fade out or fade in and out other pieces that I already knew. So I wasn't completely overwhelmed with lots of new repertoire, but I was kind of trying to transition. I had lots of people helping to advise on that, but it was a big ask. When I look at the students now where I'm teaching in America, unless you have a goal, it's very hard to get the motivation. And I think this time that we're living through is also difficult because it's like, well, everything's being cut, everything is being cancelled, and what is the point? But I'm sort of like, well, use this time because it won't come back potentially. Like, when things build up again and hopefully we're all back to some sort of normality, you'll be grateful for this time. So making your own deadlines in that case, and your own plans and your own goals can be hugely important during a time like this. But certainly those opportunities kept me focused. And the important thing is then you balance that with free time or time out. I mean, it's a fine line, isn't it, between this deep focus and being able to relax. And yeah.
I mean, Jess Giddham once told me, I was asking her, she was at the RNPN, we spoke a little, and she said that she used to only work, and that wasn't helping, and she learned to balance things. She had to be socializing a bit to be healthy. So
Yeah.
I guess finding that balance is one of the biggest things that can help you. gets it on the right path.
Yeah, and I think, I haven't got the book here, but I've just written a book called Flow, and it's all about consciousness and how you direct your psychic energies. And I think we have a choice always, like every day we have choice. One of the hard things as a freelance musician is that, or you're working from home as an artist, is to create your own schedule and your own discipline. And I always worry that if I'm not working, I'm wasting time. But I'm learning, like you just said about Jessica, to think of ways in which I can get enjoyment out of other things that actually kind of inevitably feed into your playing. And there's a certain period in your life when you need to do lots and lots of practice. But I think, and training yourself and good habits in the right way. And of course, we're always relearning every day. But I'm trying to give myself, and this time has actually helped for me to open my mind in that sense. Read more and get outdoors more, and socialize, socially distanced, and communicating with friends and things.
Yeah, that happens. What you just said, it happens to be like extremely relevant to my next question, which is this: do you still have major technical epiphanies? Because I'd imagine of course, we're all constantly learning and we all constantly find things that we can improve on, subtle things, but like you're somebody who does have an extremely robust technique. You've more or less mastered a lot of the repertoire, I think it would be fair to say. And you've gone through a lot of important stages, so I'd imagine your technique is fairly fixed. And at the moment, I'm through this sort of transitionary phase where I'm still, constantly just shuffling things, and my understanding is incomplete. Sort of, I think one thing is the case one day, and then the next, I realize it's wrong, and then I'm going back and forth. And I was wondering, actually, perhaps, is there anything like that? Do you still have those moments? Like,
Well, look,
deep study.
listen, if I'm going to pay you later for all the nice things you've said, I'll pay you later. But I'm just going to show you what's on my music stand if I bring it over. Let's see. I've got all my books here. Let's see. There's a few more down here. Let's see what we've got. So, like, I'm a bit of a cello geek, to be honest with you. But here, this is a new scale book which I've recently acquired, which is the Guillaumian system, and it's been edited by Hans Jensen. And this is fabulous because it's got all sorts of different types of arpeggios and different combinations of fingerings and different types of scales, and it really challenges me. And in the back, it's got different rhythmic patterns and bowing patterns. So I'm trying to test myself all the time and think of, because as you said, we need to keep rejuvenating, rethinking, start again. So that's my latest thing. There's 2 volumes. There's a double stock book as well, which is volume 2. And then of course we've got the good old Popper.
Oh gosh.
I've been cycling through. I've just been doing this one. Is it number 39? It's got some octaves and various things happening.
I'm really familiar enough with Popper. Every time I've dipped my toe, I've gotten a bit scared because it just opens up these cans of worms, and I get frustrated because before I practice something intensely, I want to understand every single technical issue, but the more time I spend trying to understand things, the less time I'm actually doing the manual practices. Like the fourth, let's say the fourth Popper introduces the fourth finger in thumb position, and it's just like, how on earth does?
Well, they used to play a lot with the fourth finger. It's less so now, and you can create your own fingerings. But the fourth finger helps with the balance of the hand and strengthening the hand, and the rotation in the hand. but you know, it's the sort of thing that you make your own. I think, you know, it's tough, isn't it? But it's, and the fourth finger is so weak in comparison to the other end of the, you know, as we rotate through the hand, the one and two is very nice.
The position that it's in, it's so short.
Yes. Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah.
if you were to play with a collapsed hand, so the fourth could come down, your fingers would look completely bent out of shape. There'd be no gravity. Like,
and every hand is different, you know, so you've got to figure it out, yeah, for yourself. And then look, good old Mr. Piatti, which that goes into a whole nother dimension. And so I'm reminding myself of those partly because the students are playing them and I need to know what's going on. Bach every day. Was it Casals said, you know, there should be a suite every day and then Sunday is a day of rest. In fact, I've got Mr. Casals here. This is a fabulous book on interpretation. And it's the art of interpretation. It's really, really fabulous, that. What else have I got here? This is a Mantel, Gerhard Mantel. I came across, a student showed me an article and I was really interested in his sort of concepts, and so I started looking into practicing etudes. He's got some very interesting ideas. And then there's another book, Cello Technique. I'm just actually, funny enough, we were talking about vibrato. This is the next chapter on vibrato. So, I mean, I think what I'm saying is that, you know, the curiosity is so important. And obviously that's very cello focused. And there's other things to expand. I mean, for example, where is it here? I've got The Unfettered Mind and Zen in the Art of Archery. These are fascinating offerings, and those go into more the kind of the spiritual, the kind of letting go, the kind of meditation, and you know, we're so lucky that we have this cherished art form and this beloved instrument that we play, that we can connect with every day, even in lockdown, and we can expand our minds and grow and develop through, you know, through a kind of, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I think obviously then the point of doing all the exercises and all the studies and all that kind of work is when you get to the music, you've already got yourself into certain good habits, and we can focus more on the music when we get to it. And we can apply some of those technical, you know, concepts and things that we've been thinking a lot about. And the absolute ultimate is to get beyond the cello, is to get beyond the difficulties they're doing. And that was the big thing about Steven. And when you watch him, is there's a kind of effortless control, which, you know, with the greatest artists, you see, and when you watch tennis players, you know, like Federer or whatever, in any walk of life, it just looks like there's so much time and it's effortless. And I think what we're trying to get to is a point where you can get to a state where something else takes over, and so that's why I think a lot of hard work can help to get you closer. Yeah,
absolutely. That technical stuff, ultimately, the more work you put in, the less you should. It's like an Occam's razor situation, I find. I mean, I used to be extremely focused on certain mental processes during shifts, and suddenly I realized, once I had actually figured out the physics behind it, the only thing I could do was let my body take over. Our brains, our nervous system, our muscles, it's all one thing, and it's clever. It knows what to do. If you try to emulate what will already happen, when you do a shift, let's say, a D to a D, a lyrical shift, the bow will, it will be split between the new and the old, but if you try and do that, it will sound contrived and ugly. And I hear this often, and I understand it because I used to try doing that. But the only thing you can do is just let your body take over. That's the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that you have to go through some journey in order to get to that point. So you know, you were talking about old and new bow on a shift, you know, whether you're going with the new bow on a shift or whether you're still finishing off the last bow before you arrive, etc. Those sorts, obviously you can't think of that in performance, but you can train your reflexes and your your kind of tastes are developed through being in the cello laboratory. And there's something has to change then in performance, because as we were saying, it's something about letting go and trusting and almost forgetting how you've learned something. But it's a fascinating thing. And, I think that the closer we can connect with our hearts and our bodies, as you say, and the pit of our stomach, our instinct, and of course instinct can develop through knowing and learning, the more chance we have of communicating the power of this great music.
Exactly. And it's often paradoxically extremely difficult to let go. It's extremely difficult to put that complete and utter faith in yourself. But once you have that, once you've understood it, then you have the sort of privilege of forgetting it.
Yeah.
But the truth remains lodged in your head. Just the fact that you've worked it out remains comforting, I think. And you can always bring it back if you feel something's ever so slightly off.
Yeah. And I think that not putting your expectations too high and accepting that we're not perfect, and also what was I thinking? Just accepting, being present in the moment. That's what I'm trying to learn, is experiencing this moment in the moment, and that's really, because that opens up possibilities that you can't. When you've got other listeners, it changes the way you are, and you've got to, like when you play Bach on your own, it's very different to when you're sharing it with the listener, and we've got to somehow feel the fear and do it anyway, as they say. There was a great film recently of the guy who did this extraordinary climb up a cliff, and I've forgotten. Maybe you know it. Is it The Edge? No, there's a cricket one. There's a film that came out.
Walking film, is it?
There's a tightrope one, but this guy was going up some impossible climb, and he had no safety wires or anything to support him if he fell. And the first time he went, he did a tremendous amount of training for it, and then he refused to go up the first time. He just didn't feel ready in his mind. And actually that says a lot about mental training in what we do. There's a lot of mental side of things to overcome what we're trying to achieve. But he did it, and it was absolutely extraordinary when he went back and you saw this journey that he took up this mountain without any support. And I think that was sheer grit and determination and mind over matter, and so we need to love music as deeply as anything, and care for what we do, and feel right doing it. That this is really what is our passion and what we want.
Yeah, if you keep that in your head, then anything you can do anything. You can. Well, you shouldn't strain yourself to the point of physical injury, but you'll feel compelled to give your heart and soul. That is what I mean, I think.
Live for it. Yeah.
The final question is a little more fun. Well, do I mean fun? I'm not sure, but
we should be having fun with all our work as well.
Last questions were fun as well. What did I even mean by that? Okay, this is it's a bit of an encore question. Let's say. So you have a time travel machine. Let's say the Doctor offers you a trip in the TARDIS to one musical event in the past. It can be any musical event, and you'll get to meet the stars of this event afterwards and ask them anything, talk to them. Where do you choose to go? Who do you want to see?
Wow, I don't know. Handel Messiah just came into my head. Maybe that goes back to my earliest music making, but also just this feeling of being in amongst that music and singing. Yeah, as a chorister, and it's such an extraordinary piece. And yeah, of course, there's a few obvious choices in there, but Handel. I think that would be fascinating.
And
place to
you'd
go.
want to meet Handel afterwards.
I'd love
You'd
to
want
meet all of them.
all of the
Oh
greats.
gosh, yeah. I mean, imagine meeting Bach and all his children, and seeing him at work, and then running to the church and seeing whatever offering he's just delivered for all the musicians in residence, or Haydn working at Esterhazy and thrillingly pulling all the musicians together, and just to see that in operation. I mean, Beethoven, of course, his ninth. What an experience! Or even. Gosh, it's a bit like the desert island, isn't it? If you were to take one thing with you, I think I'd probably take the Bach suites with me for sure. But
in terms of like meeting Bach, do you think he'd like be able to sort of spill his otherworldliness, or do you think like it's just so it's incomprehensible? You might not even be able to understand if he tried describing it to you, like his processes.
yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Imagine trying to start up conversation with him. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I was in Leipzig last year, and I was reading John Ellick Gardner's book on Bach, and it just yeah. Sorry,
I just remembered like a friend gave it to me, and I still haven't given it.
oh my goodness, it's such a fun read. It's amazing. It kind of go on this journey, and I arrived in Leipzig just at the right moment, and going into the Thomaskirche and imagining this great man, working around there, was kind of overwhelming, and the spirit in the place, and it's amazing. It wasn't all that long ago these great composers were living on earth, and when we hear their music, you can't believe they once lived here.
It's just as fabulous today.
Yeah.
Their sort of tutelage and their genius lives on in other people. Like music is a sort of unbroken chain. That there wasn't a single day where it kind of took a day off. I mean, people have never stopped thinking about music. It's a continuously living thing.
And new music is incredibly important. Yeah. I've been commissioning a lot of new music, and that's thrilling because you don't know what it's going to sound like, and the audience hear it for the first time. And when you're in that moment, that's thrilling. So I think composers, they find it hard talking about each other's music, and because they're trying to find their own voice as well. And when there's been so much that's happened already. I mean, people after Beethoven found it. Was it Brahms who waited for years before he wrote a symphony? And so in awe of Beethoven, and I think. We're very lucky. What an amazing and extraordinary art form, and let's hope that it continues to get the support and opportunities that it deserves in the future when life starts up again.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we're on a sort of knife edge at the moment, but what can we do? All we can do is champion our cause, try and raise awareness, and keep on playing. I suppose that's
absolutely
the best way to do things. I'll offer my choice of concert.
Yes, go for it.
It seems, but I don't know if I'd regret this because it's not going back to see, a dead great composer, but it would be going to see a great dead cellist. I am in a constant state of regret that I could never hear Rostropovich. So, I mean, I could get the highest quality speaker and listen to all his works, but it wouldn't be the same as watching him. So, if I could go and see any concert, I think it would have to be his 1960, was it 7 performance?
Dvorak, was it in the prom?
I've actually spoken to someone who was a nurse at the time during the performance, and she recounted the events, and it was incredible hearing that.
There was a demonstration, wasn't there? Because and yeah,
I just want to, if I could even hear one bow stroke, that would satisfy me.
amazing. Yeah, I remember when he came to conduct the National Youth Orchestra, and we were all longing for him to take a cello and play something, but it never happened. He was quite old by then, and I don't think he was playing as much. But he was very inspiring, and his presence was just incredible. You just felt the power of the music just with him being there, knowing that he knew Shostakovich and we were playing one of his symphonies. But yeah, you always hear people talk about when they heard these great artists, and it was a different style of playing. But Rostropovich obviously opened up the world for the cello, because we went from a supportive bass line to a soloistic animal, for want of a better word. But he developed the repertoire hugely, and his sound and his whole being was just incredibly inspiring.
Not to mention just the sheer amount of incredible people he taught that are now incredible teachers who have taught even more incredible people. And then you realize that perhaps even a majority of music college students have Rostropovich as their cello grandfather or great grandfather.
Yeah.
Quite incredible how
I was just in Moscow. Yeah, I was in Moscow in November, and his amazing statue. I know that statues are a little bit debatable now, but it's just glorious seeing this extraordinary icon that's looking down at you. He's playing his cello and he's looking down, and even that is kind of, you just reach up to this giant of a figure.
Did you hear him play? Did you hear him play?
No, sadly not. Yeah.
Oh gosh, at least you understand my pain.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, no.
We can dream. Maybe in the next life we will hear.
Yeah. Maybe there's some sort of cello heaven.
Yes.
That sounds like something Steven would say. Slightly.
Yes.
I hope so too.
Well, his main thing was don't sound like a cellist. I'm not a cellist. I'm a musician. That's and I think that came from Casals even.
He said, "I'm a human first." Oh gosh, what was it? Human first, cellist second. No, human first, musician second, and cellist third. There we go.
Very good.
That's it. Anyway, those are my questions answered.
Fantastic.
It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
It's been fun, Joseph. Thank you. It's been really fun.
And I hope to see you next year. I have no idea what the context would be, but I'm sure the RNCM would love to have you.
Life is full of surprises. I'm sure our paths will meet at some point.
I'm sure. Just, I guess I'll see you around once things start moving again. Enjoy this time while it lasts, I suppose. And I'll see you on the stage.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you very much, Guy. I'm just going to stop recording now.